Is this the most frequently read passage in the Book of Mormon? I think it is. For me, it is. When I was a young man, I planned to go on a mission. The thing is, I haven't finished reading the Book of Mormon because most of the time I start reading it from First Nephi chapter 1 and then ended up losing the momentum of reading all through the book. So what happened was I start all over again and then start over and over again. So what I did was when I decided to go on a mission, I make it a point to start reading it and then finishing it. So most of the time I end up reading First Nephi chapter 1 verse 1. I think there's a genius behind First Nephi chapter 1 verse 1. When we try to understand the Book of Mormon being an ancient text, does the Book of Mormon has a Hebraic style or ancient literary style of writing? Nephi being um, born during the BC time or period. When I look into the text, First Nephi chapter 1 verse 1, I think is the most read scripture or scriptural passage in the Book of Mormon. Let's dive into it. When Nephi wrote this book about 590 BC, he started with the phrase "I Nephi." Question: does Nephi's opening statement "I Nephi" reflect on ancient Hebrew literary style, in which the author introduces himself as the writer of the record? Um, this style or literary style is called autobiographical prologue or first person prophetic commissioning. When we look into other prophets, either in the Old Testament or in the Book of Mormon, we can see that most of them would start their text or scripture with the phrase I and then their name, or introduce themselves as the author. For example, Nephi stated I Nephi in First Nephi chapter 1 verse 1. Jeremiah in his book Jeremiah chapter 1 verse 1 says the words of Jeremiah. Nehemiah as well in Nehemiah chapter 1 verse 1 says the words of Nehemiah. Another is Daniel in Daniel chapter 7 verse 15. He says I Daniel. Also, there's Paul in the New Testament in his letter to the Romans in Romans chapter 1 verse 1, Paul mentions his name as the author. So that statement, introductory statement alone, wherein the author says, I Nephi, is an Hebrew, ancient Hebrew literary style of writing called an autobiographical prologue or the first person prophetic commissioning. I think that alone states or gives the impression that the Book of Mormon is of ancient text. And in the next video, we'll be talking about what comes after his introduction. So yeah, so stop watching this and go read your scriptures.